Hey guys, so this is gonna be the last PoE video of this league, and I even allowed myself to go like full meta, Mageblood, Progenesis. It's Deadeye, Lightning Arrow, so it's kind of meta already. And this was not the build for Lightning Arrow, like I said in the previous video. This is I'm gonna try to come up with a build with the infinite arrow mechanic. I'm gonna explain briefly what it is, just to remind you. Then talk about other things that I tested, what didn't work, the rest about the build. But the build itself is nothing really amazing, considering that I have Mageblood and I went like full meta. It was just an experiment to see if I can make a build around well, Infinite Arrows and Vaal Lightning Arrow. The conclusion was it's not really worth doing this mechanic pretty much at all. How this works, just to remind you, essentially the Gluttonous Tide, you gain frenzy charges, those turn into arrows essentially, and they are added at the end of your final arrow. So you queue up arrows, you have to release your arrows sequentially in a straight line, not into the sky, in a straight line. And you have to cycle this before your last arrow is released, because then the attack is finished and you cannot really add more arrows to the end of the attack. The bow alone is not enough. I am also using 2 precursors with 30% chance that if you would gain a frenzy charge, you would instead get a maximum frenzy charges, and I have 2 of these, so I have 60% chance. I have 100% crit chance with a slight condition, and I just need to be shocked and with the exposure to reach that 100%. So that's essentially how it works. You either need barrage support, barrage skill, or another skill that releases arrows sequentially, which is Vaal Lightning Arrow. And for Vaal Lightning Arrow you don't need barrage support. Now the other things that I tested, and pretty much nothing really worked, nothing came out of this that would be, oh wow, that's amazing. No, nothing like that. So Vaal Burning Arrow with the barrage support is bad because it does not explode where you aim. Normally without barrage support you just shotgun with a bunch of explosions where you aim. Essentially it's like a ground targeted skill, but with the barrage support it just shoots in a straight line until it hits a wall or some other obstacle. So it's just bad. You can make it not pierce and it probably would work, but it's just annoying and it's not really doing anything great. Vaal Lightning Arrow does absolutely nothing. You just summon it and we just do nothing. We just stand and do nothing because you're not really performing a new attacks for them to work. Also learn that you cannot weapon swap at all. You are not even allowed to weapon swap. The Mana Forge also did not work in any way because the barrage support doesn't even link with Mana Forge because it cannot link it, and the barrage skill also doesn't even link with the Mana Forge. So Mana Forge is completely out of the window. All the things that cannot consume charges like Ballista, Straps, Mines, and Mirage Archer will not work. It will work just for one attack like it would normally would, but it will not like continuously add arrows to it. The Void Pressure I mentioned in the previous video doesn't, like, it does work strangely, but it works the same way as if you stood still and just continuously kept attacking again. So it does nothing differently. It does not add those arrows to the Void Pressure. Anything that shoots into the sky, like I said, will not work because it's not sequential shooting, it's only sequential like landing. So Rain of Arrows, Blast Rain, any artilleries, well, ballistas won't work to begin with, but anything like that will not work because when you shoot like Rain of Arrows, you don't shoot sequentially into the sky, you only release like one attack, one animation, and it's just all the arrows fly into the sky and then they land sequential. So that's not gonna work. If it triggers the arrow cycle, it will be added to the next attack you perform. The Arsonal's helmet won't work, the Rain of Arrows boots won't work. Like, I could not find any other practical applications for this except the Vaal Lightning Arrow, which you can spam. However, I ran into some problems and I'm not entirely sure why. Sometimes it just fails right from the start. I assume I sometimes did not proc those small conditional things like shock before using the Vaal skill or exposure, and that way I was missing some crit chance and I just did not crit. I think it may have something to do with having either too much attack speed or like it's kind of confusing and complicated, but when you gain extra arrows for your next attack and when you perform Vaal Lightning Arrow, you will shoot more projectiles, and I think it locks how many projectiles you're gonna be consuming per second for the rest of the infinity. However, when you do that, I think you are able to consume more projectiles per second, therefore the projectiles that you queue up get drained faster, and at the beginning it's actually easier to drain all the projectiles before you can queue up enough of them. It's kind of hard to explain, and I'm still wrapping my head around that. Is that really how it works? But from the experience, it's very annoying to actually use Vaal Lightning Arrow. It locks you in place, by the way, although sometimes even the Galvanic Arrow was locking me in place, so I couldn't understand what's happening. Why sometimes, normally Galvanic Arrow, when you do this like and you proc the infinite arrow queue, you can cancel animation, but sometimes I couldn't. I would just get stuck and I could not understand why. So yeah, I still don't know why that happens sometimes, but either way, that's besides the point. The point is that the enemies have to be kind of not moving, and you're essentially not doing the most damage with the projectiles that start changing direction and hit enemies again, but with the initial like barrage sequential hits. You have to be performing that very close to the enemy, otherwise you're gonna release your arrows too quickly before they actually hit, because I'm actually also getting reduced projectile speed. So it has so many like anti-synergy. The enemies have to be not moving, which is like what enemies are not gonna be moving. Pretty much all the enemies like Baron for example and Rocks don't really move. Pretty much the rest are just moving all the time. And in the end the damage wasn't that great. There are ways to like reduce projectile speed even more, but I will actually lose the damage, and this is level 91. I could level up a bit more and get more damage, but what's the point? I'm done with the league. I don't really want to push this because it's not amazing. I'm gonna show you how I set up this build. I will leave path for building import code in video description as well if you want to analyze. Maybe take part of it and apply it to your own build. Now the Mageblood is not needed. Actually I even started playing without the Mageblood. Just Mageblood allowed me to adjust the passive skill tree a bit, and another thing that I absolutely wanted is stun avoidance. So previously I was getting these 3 points, but Mageblood essentially allowed me to use a flask like this with chance to avoid being stunned, and that's all I needed to cap my stun avoidance, so I could just refund these. I am still missing 1 charm, and I am missing like this damage node. I could also get an extra arrow here, pick up these, but like I said, I'm worried that too much attack speed actually makes it worse, because then you have to be even closer to the target, and if the target just sidesteps a bit and you miss, well, that's it, the skill is brick. You could also carry the soul repair flask, which you would have to charge. There are so many small things, but ask yourself, is it really worth doing this rather than just using like a normal skill or something else for a single target? In my opinion, the answer is no. Now the defenses mostly come from Progenesis. Defiance of Destiny is amazing, and of course like suppression, evasion. I don't even have blind yet. I did try to get some Here's resistance, so I do have like 0 Here's rest normally, but with the flask it's like 35. I am using Watcher's Sight just to sustain Progenesis better, and then use Galvanic Arrow with the barrage support. Like it hits so many times per second, it's actually easier to, and because it's always critting, you are generating flash charges very reliably, as long as the target doesn't move like behind you or too much to the side. So I do have like this decent body armor, lots of life, crit. Strength and int was a bit of a struggle on the right side of the tree as always. The gloves, I had these from before, like you could get a bit better gloves. Getting enough resistance was also a bit of a challenge, because I wanted to not use the bismuth flask. The quiver I also crafted myself, the helmet I had from before. Now the supports and links, Vaal Lightning Arrow linked to I pretty much got the last couple like upgrades, like Awaken Gems and quiver, like the last 1 or 2 levels. So it's linked to Awaken Elemental Damage of Attacks, increased crit damage, Awaken Lightning Penetration, very important to have exposure. Awakened Added Lighting, because it just gives a lot of flat damage, because the bulb doesn't really have very much damage. And Volatility. And the second setup is Galvanic Arrow. I decided to go with Galvanic Arrow, but you could just use Lightning Arrow. You would be able to shock for more, but I think the final damage is still better with Galvanic Arrow. So it is linked to Elemental Damage of Attacks. Barrage support is a must. I ideally would use like crit damage instead of hypothermia, but it's hard to recolor. Then Awaken Lighting Pen, because I also want exposure for the extra crit chance. I'm gonna show on the passive skill tree later. And Awaken Added Lighting damage as well. Then for the auras, Precision, Grace, Arctic Armor for the freeze immunity, because the Pantheon powers, I'm not using this one anymore, since I do have a stun immunity, and I got freeze immunity from Arctic Armor, and if I'm standing still, Arctic Armor just works really well. And all of these are linked to Enlighten. Then I also got like a Sniper's Mark. You could use like Sniper's Mark with Mark on hit. You would have a bit less damage. Frost Blink is a must. I still carry Cast and Death Portal. And Flame Ball with Cast and Damage taken. I don't really like having this, but it has a tiny bit more DPS. For the flask, I am using Quicksilver with a bit of crit chance to just get enough crit chance for reaching 100%. Then Silver Flask, the Onslaught I was told scales with the Flask effect, so the Onslaught is actually quite strong. It gives me movement speed, attack speed as well, and cast speed. And I did want to avoid being stunned. And then Quartz Flask to cap my suppression. And I wanted shock immunity because it makes me a lot tankier when I know I cannot be shocked, and like 50% shock on you is like massive. So you kind of have to either reduce it a lot or avoid being shocked, and I don't have that. And then Progenesis just gives a lot, remove bleed. The passive skill tree, I do have Brutal Restraint here, but only because I'm getting quite a bit of damage here. But pretty much that is all. Getting some attack speed. It was supposed to be blind here, damage there, a bit of damage here, and a bit of damage here and here. So yeah, I'm getting invent resistances. In PUB it says that it's worth getting it, but I'm not sure because I do have exposure, and like I said, I do need exposure because of a couple of things. First of all, against shocked enemies I get 100% increased crit chance. And I believe, yeah, I get 90% conversion actually, so it's not even 100% conversion. And from this also get extra crit chance against enemies with lightning exposure. So if I don't shock and apply exposure, I'm missing 160% crit chance, which is pretty massive. So you kind of have to attack first, apply shock, apply exposure, and then use Vaal Lightning Arrow, which is hard to do in the middle of the battle. The Watcher Size is basically for flash generation and just to be unaffected by Enfeeble, which is very annoying for crit builds. That which was taken is basically just 2 damage mods and some hair stress. Charms, you do need charms like, well, the crit part, you do need that part. Base crit chance at maximum power charges, and you are always at maximum because of Ralakesh boots. The fair charm, I would use this one just to get a bit more hair stress, and damage wise, this mod, physical damage, if you have dealt a critical strike recently, is pretty similar to the penetration, to the physical as extra random element modifiers, so it can be either of those. Now I don't think that you actually need a reduced projectile speed at all, because Vaal Lightning Arrow is kind of bad skill in my opinion. It's not doing much damage or enough damage to even help with the clear speed, to even help with the single target. You can literally use any other skill for single target and it would perform better. So the Vaal Lightning Arrow is just bad in my opinion. Just drop like a projectile speed and you could use those points to get like an actual damage. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. This also, like I said, is the last PoE video. Last epoch is in like 3 days, and until then I'm probably gonna play some other games. And after last epoch, I don't know how long it's gonna last, maybe a week, yeah, maybe a week, maybe a bit more. I'll probably do some video about last epoch. I played it in the past, but it's been more than like 2 years since the last time I played last epoch. I'll play last epoch, then I have some other games queued up, and we still got like 1 month until end of the league, until new league starts, so there's quite a bit of time left. But for now, thank you for watching, and I will see you the next time. Bye bye.